Hey guys, in today's video you will meet Emily Grace, a young worship leader who died for 7 minutes and came back with a shocking revelation from Jesus. The secret sin she thought was harmless was actually taking her soul to hell. What she saw on the other side will shake you. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss anything. And comment here from which city you are watching. My name is Emily Grace Whitmore. And if you saw my life from the outside, you might think I was the picture of the perfect Christian woman. 27 years old, worship leader at one of the largest churches in North Carolina, thousands of followers on social media, always smiling at services, always with a Bible in hand, the apple of everyone's eye, the voice that made the church cry. But only I knew what happened when the lights went out. Since I was 14, I struggled with something no one imagined. It all started with an innocent click, a pop-up, a quick video, and then another, and another, until it becomes habit, then refuge, then addiction. I grew up in a Christian home. I knew it was wrong. But the truth is that, over time, my heart was divided. Half wanted to please God, and the other surrendered to the secret pleasure of scenes that broke me inside. I convinced myself with the same lies you may have heard. Everyone has a struggle. God understands my weakness. I will stop. Just this once. But this last time stayed with me for more than a decade. I prayed on Sunday and fell on Monday. I led the worship with tears in my eyes and then hid in the bathroom, devastated, without the courage to face myself in the mirror. I knew the verses. I talked about holiness, but deep down, in the most intimate part of my being, I was already far away. Very far away. The last straw came one night when I had another relapse. I was alone in my room, crying, listening to Christian music and begging, "God, please forgive me, I don't want this anymore." The next day I got in the car early. My eyes were still swollen, trying to sing an elevation worship song to comfort myself. But the truth is, my heart was in pieces. It was on a simple curve, close to home. A truck didn't brake in time. The impact was direct. Everything went white. Then, silence. For 7 minutes, my body was clinically dead. And it was in that short interval that I experienced something that I will never be able to forget. Because that day I not only saw the truth, I was crossed for her. The first thing I remember was the silence. A silence so dense, so absolute, that it seemed to have weight. I didn't see anything. I couldn't feel my body. It was as if my ears were immersed in water, but water that doesn't wet. And then a strange awareness hit me. I'm not alive anymore. There was no pain. None. No panic at first. Just a kind of suspension, like my existence was on pause. But little by little, something began to change. A feeling of displacement, as if I was being pulled out of something very heavy. And then I saw myself. I saw my own body, crushed in the car seat, my eyes closed, my face covered in blood. It was a shock. My body, there, and I, here. The sight of the accident was brutal. But what scared me most was realizing how much I felt lucid. I thought. I felt it. I existed. Outside the body. The road, the firefighters arriving, the screams around them. Everything seemed distant, like a play taking place too far from the stage where I now found myself. It was then that the environment began to transform. The sunlight, the trees around, everything disappeared like smoke being sucked in. And I was taken to another place, a space that wasn't exactly dark, but it didn't have any light either. It was neutral, a void full of tension, like a corridor between two worlds. There, my thoughts gained a frightening clarity. And it was there, in that in-between place, that the first images began to emerge. These were not random visions. They were memories. Mine. Every hidden click, every anonymous tab opened on your cell phone, every tear after the last video, every broken promise, Everything was being revealed in sequence, like a movie thrown against the walls of my soul. There was no stopping, no running away, and more than seeing, me felt. I felt the spiritual betrayal it caused every time I exchanged the presence of God for a filthy screen. I felt the Holy Spirit, silent, injured, not out of anger, but out of sadness. That deep sadness that only those who love feel. My heart was breaking like thin glass piece by piece. And then I heard a voice. It wasn't high, it wasn't severe, but he had an authority that cut across everything. You adored me in public, but you slept with your addiction in secret. It was there that my soul began to shake. Something was coming, someone was approaching, and I knew that I couldn't hide anything anymore. I don't know how long I stayed in that place. Minutes? Hours? There was no time there. What existed was conscience, total, raw, unfiltered. And that awareness hurt more than any physical pain I had ever felt. Light began to appear in the distance. It was no ordinary light. It wasn't shine. Was presence. A presence that didn't need to say its name to be recognized. I knew. My spirit knew. It was him. Jesus. But not like the pictures hanging in churches. Not even like the images in worship songs. It was a living light. A person without a defined form but with absolute identity. The kind of presence that fills everything and reveals everything. When he approached, I couldn't run, or hide my face or say anything. You knew that every second there would leave me completely naked in front of the truth. Not the truth of others. Mine. The one I never even told myself. He looked at me. And it wasn't a look of hate, it wasn't fury. It was a pain so pure and that it hurt me more than if he had screamed. A holy, broken, disappointed love. As if to say, I was here, always have been, and you preferred another altar. My justifications started running through my mind. It was just a habit. I tried to stop. I felt a lot later. I thought grace covered everything. But each excuse died before it was completed. Because in the presence of Jesus, words are no shield. He doesn't need to argue. He and the truth. And before him, every argument turns to dust. It was at that moment that I saw it. Not with physical eyes, it was like an inner revelation, a throne in the center of my heart. And on that throne, Jesus was not there. He was my addiction. Pornography was not just a recurring sin. It was the God that I fed in secret, the momentary pleasure I would kneel in when no one saw. And the scariest thing, I had built that throne with my own hands. Jesus then said, without an audible voice but with a clarity that passed through me, You sang to me with your lips, but your heart was divided. I fell apart. In that instant I understood. Pornography was not a weakness. Was a form of idolatry, a hidden altar that kept me away from true love. And the worst part? I knew it. On some level, I always knew. In his presence, everything was exposed, including the times I used grace as an excuse, not as transformation. And Jesus showed me. The greatest trap of secret sin is that it disguises itself as struggle, while it silently dominates the soul. The sight of the throne broke my spirit. It was made up of things I fed myself, clicks, thoughts, fantasies, silences. Every bit of that throne was a just one more time, a God understands, a I'll stop later. It was grotesque, but it didn't look like a monster. It felt comfortable, family, dangerous. That's when I realized the throne was not mine alone. There were others all around. Hundreds, thousands, each one different, each one with its own decoration. Some held high with pride, others, like mine, hidden behind masks of holiness. Jesus took me in spirit between these thrones. I saw faces of men and women I knew, shepherds, ministers of praise, young leaders, mothers, children. Everyone looked strong on the outside, but on the inside, dominated. Not because of a force that dragged them by force, but because of something that they themselves fed. In secret. And then I saw it. Demons. But not like screaming monsters or movie beasts. They were subtle, dark. Some even have almost serene faces. But the eyes were pure hunger. They fed of what came out of those thrones, of the hidden habits, the silent pacts, the small concessions that no one confessed. One of them approached my throne and touched it with pleasure, as if to say, "That's mine. You offered it to me." It was like a stab in the soul. I wanted to scream, I wanted to run, I wanted to erase everything, but there, I couldn't do anything, just see, to feel, to know. Knowing that I had built an altar not to God but to the enemy, thinking it was just a personal fight. Jesus in silence looked at me, and this time, I couldn't take it. I fell, or whatever falling without a body means, but my spirit collapsed like never before. I cried, with the soul, a cry that wasn't just regret. It was agony of having betrayed the one who loved me more than anything. And he said, "You sought relief, not release. Refuge, not redemption. You built comfort in the place where I wanted to heal you." Those words burned, because they were true. I wanted to stop suffering, not stop sinning. I wanted to feel less guilt, but I never really wanted to separate myself from what destroyed me. Jesus didn't scream. He didn't accuse me, but his presence was so holy, so true, that it was impossible to continue pretending. At that moment, I understood. Pornography is not just a dirty sin. It is a secret, sanctuary where many kneel thinking they are still standing before God. And that's when he showed me what I never expected to see. Jesus stretched out his hand, and I was taken, not with steps, but with a speed that only eternity knows, to a different space. A type of room, immense, circular, with a soft light that seemed to come from inside the walls. But what impacted me most were the images. They were suspended in the air like windows floating in nothingness. Each one revealed someone's life, not names, just fragments of the soul, exposed as in a celestial archive. And what I saw took my breath away, if I was still breathing. We men with Bible in hand and eyes that, in the dark, searched for the same trash that I consumed. We women who led prayer groups, but at night they indulged in digital addictions, justifying themselves with lack. We young people with a Christian profile on social media, but with hidden directories on their cell phones, full of dirty images. We couples praying together, but they didn't know each other's secrets. And the most disturbing thing, I saw that all of them believed they were right with God, that his worship was enough, that his delivery was good enough, and Jesus made me understand there with pain in my eyes. The deception is not just in sin, it is in living thinking that sin can be kept as a detail. The images followed each other like scenes from a divine documentary, but I wasn't there as a spectator. I moved between them. I saw my own story projected. I found myself singing, smiling, receiving praise, preaching about holiness, and then deleting my browser history with shaking hands. Tear, spiritual because I no longer had a body, I fell from my soul. And Jesus said, "The greatest danger is not falling, it is making falling a habit, and habit, a hiding place." The room then started to get dark, but not by threat. It was as if everything was being collected, as if that revelation had fulfilled its purpose. And I began to feel something I will never forget, an eternal weight on the shoulders of those who live in duplicity. I felt that in that state, if Jesus hadn't reached me, I couldn't stand it any longer. Why absolute truth destroys every comfortable illusion, I cried again, And I whispered, even without a mouth, "Sir, why did you show me all this?" And his response was an eternal whisper that still echoes in me today. "Because you still have time." That sentence changed everything. After that room, I thought there was nothing else that could surprise me. I had already seen my hidden throne, the demons that fed on my surrender, and the lives of so many others like me, living a divided faith. But I was wrong. What came next was even heavier, because it wasn't just about me anymore. Jesus then took me to a place that marked me forever. It was dark, but not like the emptiness at the beginning. It was dense, opaque, alive, a kind of darkness that seemed to pulse with pain. I didn't see fire or screams like I imagined hell would be, but I felt as if the atmosphere itself were filled with lament. There was no explicit punishment, but absolute absence of God, an icy silence that screamed, a void that crushed. And suddenly I started to realize there were people there, faces, silhouettes, souls, lots of. Some motionless, as if paralyzed in their memories. Others agitated, struggling, trapped in regrets that came too late. And what tore me most, some of those faces I recognized. People who had spoken about Jesus, that one day they had walked in the light, but they chose to live in duplicity until the end. I understood without anyone explaining it to me. They were not condemned for falling, but for never truly repenting. Because they thought they could maintain two masters, Jesus and addiction, until their last breath. A female figure approached. His eyes were empty. His mouth tried to scream, but no sound came out. And somehow you knew what she meant. I also thought I still had time. It was like a knife to the soul, because that could have been me. Jesus then took me away from that place, but not dismissively, urgently, as if to say, "See, but do not remain here." And it took me back to the threshold between the worlds, that gray space where it all began. He spoke to me, clearly, no riddles. "Emily, many think they are overcoming sin, but they are only feeding it in secret. Many say they love me, but their habits reveal another love. And pornography is the altar where multitudes have knelt." My spirit shook, because I knew. Those words weren't just for me. They were for many. For those who kneel on Sundays, but also in front of the screen in the early hours of the morning. He approached, and his eyes, of fire and tenderness, pierced my soul with a question. "If I hadn't stopped you now, how long would you keep fooling yourself?" I had no answer, because deep down, I had no real plans to stop. It was there that I understood. Mercy sometimes manifests itself as an accident, like a forced stop, like 7 minutes, out of body. And the scariest thing? He didn't show me that to condemn me. He showed me why there was still a chance. Jesus' gaze still burned inside me, but now with a different tone, not just confrontation, but called. It was as if he said, "You saw it, now choose." And then, something started to happen. The space around me began to glow with a soft light, as if the sky itself was bending over that moment. I could feel that time, or whatever it was closing in. It was time to go back, but before that, Jesus said something that changed the axis of my existence. "Emily, I didn't bring you here to die. I brought you here to wake up." Those words were not just heard, they revived me inside. And at that moment, as if he were clothing me with something eternal, I saw before me the final dinner of revelation, my own heart, open, exposed, and divided. On the one hand, adoration. On the other, slavery. In the middle, free will. The field where I always ran away from war, hiding behind excuses, and Jesus made me understand that there is no such thing as a light sin. There is no such thing as an acceptable addiction. There is no half-commitment. Or He is Lord. Or it's nothing. I saw myself kneeling before Him, even without a body, and my words came out with the pain of someone who was broken, but also with the faith of someone who was rescued. Forgive me, Jesus. Break me completely, but don't let me go back to who I was. He approached. He touched my face with the invisible palm of glory, and He said, "So live, but live for me in the light, even when no one is watching." It was at that moment that everything began to vibrate. I heard machines beeping, voices calling my name, a cry, a siren, everything like distant echoes. And then, one last whisper, tell them there's still time, but not much. I woke up. My lungs sucked in air like someone emerging from underwater. A sharp pain shot through my chest. It was back, in the hospital, surrounded by artificial lights, people running, and my father, holding my hand with teary eyes. "Emily, you're back." I couldn't speak. Not yet. But my heart, it was already different. Because in that emergency room, what was restored, it wasn't just my body, it was my soul. Coming back to life seemed surreal. I heard doctors saying I was a miracle, that my heart stopped for almost 7 minutes, that there was no logical explanation for me to have come out of that accident without serious consequences. But they had no idea. The real scar was not visible. It burned inside. In the days that followed, my body recovered. But my mind, my soul, was still trapped in that heavenly room where my secrets were torn apart before the light of Christ. I slept and woke up with His words burning inside. "You served with your lips, but your heart was divided." It was like a spiritual tattoo, impossible to ignore. The doctors treated me like a patient, my parents as a daughter, my followers on social media as inspiration. But I knew I wasn't that Emily anymore. The Emily who led the praise and hid behind a smile no longer existed. In His place was someone marked for eternity. I turned. On my cell phone after weeks, I saw dozens of messages, invitations to sing, preach, record. Everyone wanted Emily who shined on stage. No one knew the one who was hiding in the room. But now, I could no longer live in silence. Why had Jesus said, "Tell them"? So I started with the hardest one, my mother. Sitting on the porch, with the sound of birds drowning out my cries, I told her everything. From addiction to near-death experience, from the throne to the touch of Jesus. She cried, but not out of disappointment, of breaks. She held my hand and said, "Daughter, you're not alone. You were just the first to scream." Then came the conversation with my pastor. I thought he was going to crash, but he just sighed and told me something that destroyed me again. God was already waiting for you to expose this, because He will use your healed shame as a prophetic voice for others who are still bleeding in silence. That's when I knew my public life would change forever, because I couldn't sing about freedom anymore hiding the handcuffs. I prepared a video. I recorded with a clean face, no makeup, no costume, just me, my voice, and the truth. I told everything, every detail, my experience, my addiction, the revelation of Jesus. When I posted, I didn't sleep. I thought I would be destroyed by the trials, but what came was another revelation. Thousands of people wrote saying, "It's me." Young leaders, wives, shepherds, men and women who lived in the same prison, people with smiles and services, and captivity at home. And that's when it hit. Pornography is the modern church's greatest invisible prison, and almost no one has the courage to say so. But I had seen the other side, and now I could no longer remain silent. After the video, My life turned upside down. The perfect worship leader turned the girl with the heavy testimony. Some praised my courage, others walked away in silence. I had invitations canceled, new invitations too, but it wasn't about stages anymore. It was no longer about visibility. It was about fidelity to the truth that saved me. That Sunday, I walked up to the altar of the church where I grew up for the last time. The service was packed. Many knew me since I was a child. They knew about my talent, my anointing, but no one knew about the prison. Until that day. My pastor called me to the pulpit with a serious look. The church fell silent. I took the microphone. The hands were shaking, mouth dry. But the memory lives on. I still felt the eyes of Jesus crossing me like that room outside, of time. I took a deep breath and began. I died for 7 minutes, and I saw the altar that I had built to the enemy, thinking it was just an addiction, thinking that God didn't care that much. Absolute silence. No sighs, no whispers, just wide eyes, and souls being exposed inside. I spoke of the hidden throne, from the view of divided leaders, of the familiar faces in that darkness, from the words of Jesus, and the weight of the sentence, "You sought relief, not release." People started crying, grown men, influential women, young people who had previously smiled with superiority, now lowered their heads as if they had been slapped in the soul. And then I dropped the final bombshell. Jesus said to me, "Tell them, pornography is not a common mistake. It is a door to perdition." There I knew. The truth had no return. After the service, lines formed, not to congratulate me, but for confess. Young people told me about their arrests. Couples revealed wounds. An elder looked me in the eyes, crying, and said, "I've been at this for 20 years. I thought no one knew, but Jesus knew." From that day on, my mission changed. I gave interviews. I was invited to youth conferences. I ministered on retreats, but always with the same message. Freedom does not begin at the church altar. It begins at the altar of the heart. And there is no divided altar that stands before the light of Christ. I'm not perfect. I still have difficult days, but now I live in the light. I keep my eyes, I keep my thoughts, and I keep above all the memory of where I have been and what Jesus showed me. Because the truth is not only what frees, the truth is who He is. Today, I walk differently. Not by the steps, but by the conscience, the awareness that I was pulled from the edge of the abyss not just to live, but to speak, to alert, to be the cry that many silenced out of fear, shame, or self-indulgence. Porn almost destroyed me, not my body but my soul. It doesn't burn the meat, she corrupts the spirit. She enters as a pleasure and establishes herself as an idol, a silent, digital, lonely idol, but hungry. And I fed this idol for years, until Jesus confronted me, not with condemnation, but with a truth so pure that it tore me apart, so that later rebuild myself with purpose. Today, when I look back, I no longer see shame. I see redemption. Because every hidden tear I cried alone in the bathroom, He saw. Every last time that became an addiction, He knew. Every excuse, every cry without surrender, He endured in silence, waiting for the day when my soul would scream, "He arrives." And if you've been listening to this story this far, maybe it's because this scream needs to come out of you too. You who live between two worlds. You sing, preach, advise, serve, but in the dark you return to the same well. You are the one who convinces yourself that everything is under control, but feels like you are already losing your soul in pieces. I was you. And Jesus stopped me with an accident. Maybe He is stopping you with this video. You don't have to die to awaken. I died for 7 minutes. You are still alive. And as long as there is breath, there is chance. Today, I'm no longer just Emily Grace, the worship leader at the big church. on Emily, redeemed daughter, spokesperson of truth, warrior of light. In the midst of digital shadows. And my mission is clear. Tell them, pornography isn't just a sin, it's a door to perdition. But Jesus, it is the door to eternal life. Choose which port you will feed, because one gives you relief, and the or other saves you. If you like this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.